Sup y'all, welcome to my new protection warrior guide for Warfin. This will mostly cover M+ related stuff, but we'll also go over all you really need to know about the class. Let's jump straight into the build. Starting with the talent build, you will primarily be playing Mountain Thane Warrior. If you do want to play Colossus, you can play Colossus, but Mountain Thane currently is better. These are the two talent builds I would play for Mountain Thane and Colossus. Now for the base tree, this will be the tree you'll play for the most part. We are playing Spirit instead of Roar. Spirit will do more damage. And for higher level keys, if you are worried about survivability, you can drop damage from Cruel Strike and Piercing Challenge to pick up 2 points in endurance for 10% more HP. This will also increase your Ignore Pains. That'll be very big defensively. And for the top here, you can flex between Intervene and Stormbolt. Some dungeons don't really have much use for Intervene, so you'll need to know exactly where you'll be using Intervene. And if you're not using Intervene, you should just play Stormbolt and swap this talent for Stormbolts. For the spec tree, this will be the build you'll play most of the time. However, if you can get really high haste, I'm talking about at least 15,000 haste, maybe even upwards of 20,000 haste, you want to swap into the Fray. This will give you a lot more haste, you'll do a lot more damage, you can be a lot more defensive. It's a really good talent, and when you can get to this point, Warrior really shines. But starting off, you want to play with heavy repercussions, and later down the line, if you want to be even more defensive, you can drop Ravager for Battle-Scarred Veteran. This will be a really nice safety net. In Dragonflight, this talent was bugged and it was proccing pre-mitigation, which means it was basically always proccing and you weren't getting cheat death. But now that they've fixed it, Battle-Scarred Veteran is actually really powerful and can save you from mistakes. It's not going to be as good as Ravager, but it'll be a defensive net, and having a defensive net as a tank has always been useful, just like having Purgatory as a Blood Decay or having Last Resort as Vengeance Demon Hunter, or just like having like a cheat death trinket. Either way, this will be the general build. Oh, and one more thing, you can swap out Impenetrable Wall for Defender's Aegis for very specific encounters, or if you feel like you are not utilizing the short cooldown on Impenetrable Wall enough. Impenetrable Wall will be better for the most part, just to have a shorter overall shield wall cooldown if you're just rotating it in really well. But there might be specific encounters where you'll want 2 charges of shield wall on some back-to-back mechanic, or maybe just some very scary pull, or if you just don't know how to utilize Impenetrable Wall. And for this talent over here, you can flex for Tough as Nail if you're not needing spell block, or you can also grab Bolster. I would only swap this option in maybe a dungeon like Necrotic Wake, where there isn't a whole lot of magic damage, and maybe even like Mist of Tyrannosaif. But spell block, highly recommend. Insanely OP ability, very important for your survival. For stats, you'll want the highest item level piece, but if item level is equal, you'll want as much haste as possible, followed by verse and crit. When you can get high enough haste, you can play into the Fray, which will really take your class to another level. Now, to understand the basics of Warrior, the way your class works is you generate Rage with abilities. Rage is used to put up mitigation, and your mitigation is all shield blocking and ignore pain. Shield block works by reducing physical damage taken. The higher item level your shield is, the more damage you block, so a big item level shield is important. Ignore pain just absorbs half the damage you take. So to easily understand the gameplay, we'll take a look at my UI. I have Shield Slam, Thunderclap, Shield Block, and Shield Charge tracked. These are the 4 buttons that you'll want to keep on cooldown always. Over here is my mitigation tracked too. I've got Shield Block tracked. This shows how long my Shield Block is up for, and this is my Ignore Pain tracked to show how much Ignore Pain I have and for how long. This over here is my Rage bar. So these 2 abilities you will always want to keep on cooldown. Very important. Shield Slam, even in large AoE, even though it only does single target, you want to keep it on cooldown at all times. Thunderclap is also something you're going to want to keep on cooldown at all times. Shield Charge, this will give you shield block. You also want to keep this on cooldown at all times. And Shield Block, you want to at least keep 1 charge on cooldown. You can just send both shield charges too, that will stack, so you don't have to worry about if you overlap your mitigation or whatever. You can honestly just spam your shield charge and your shield blocks. However, if it is at like the end of a pull or a boss fight, you might not want to press it just so you can have it up for the following pull. But for the most part, these 4 will be pressed on cooldown. As for how you're spending your rage, your highest priority will always be spending it on shield block. As long as you have shield block up, you're good. If you ever drop shield block, it's super bad. And for the remaining rage, it could be used on either Ignore Pain or Revenge. You don't want to be pressing Revenge. Like I said, your globals are very important. You need to be using Shield Slam and Thunderclap on cooldown. If you can't press one of these 4 buttons, then you can start resorting to pressing Revenge. And Revenge can give you Shield Slam procs. So when your Shield Slam comes back on cooldown, you're just going to want to press Shield Slam again. Let's talk about cooldowns. Avatar and Demo Shout. These two are on extremely short cooldown. When starting out, you'll want to press these on cooldown at all times. Doesn't matter if you're fighting 1 mob, 5 mobs, a boss, just press these on cooldown. Use it as often as possible throughout the dungeon. With Ravager and Champion's Spear, you'll want to combo these with Avatar as much as possible, but when you can't, also try to send these on cooldown whenever possible. Your basic combo will be, you start with Ravager plus Avatar. Avatar is off of a global cooldown, followed by Demoralizing Shout, then finally Champion's Spear, and then you proceed with your normal rotation. Use this combo when all the mobs are grouped. Outside of this, pressing Avatar right after Thunderclap is a good way to get 2 back-to-back Thunderclaps for getting aggro on mobs or just like picking up mobs, and Avatar resets the cooldown on your Thunderclap. That's why this works. For defensive cooldowns, your priority will always be Spell Reflect as highest priority if ability is reflectable, followed by Demoralizing Shout, your 25% damage reduction, followed by Shield Wall, a 40% damage reduction, which can be as short as 40-second cooldown, followed by Spell Block if the ability is magical blockable, and followed by Last Stand, which is a 30% max HP boost, and finally Rallying Cry, your weakest defensive, a 10% max HP boost. So just try not to stack your defensives too much, just go through these defensives in order, whatever is available first, and if you are out of defensives, then you might want to call for an external defensive from your healer. But with this priority of defensive cooldowns, you should be fine for almost any encounter outside of like some crazy pull. Now that you've got the basics down, here are some mistakes and extra tips to go over. First is never overcap your rage. Far too often, people are swimming in rage and aren't spending it, and this will be especially true with Mountain Thane Warrior. Spam your ignore pains during high rage moments, like when you have Ravager pressed or when you're in Lust. You want to make sure you're dumping as much rage as possible so that you're getting healing from the Indomitable talent and you're getting your avatar back quicker. Second, I've already said this, but I'll mention again, keep Shield Slam and Thunderclap on cooldown. Do not overpress Revenge. Your Shield Slam and Thunderclap globals are very important. The third tip is stay in defensive stance. It's not worth going into battle stance now unless you know that you'll literally never die. It's just 3% crit. It's not worth being in battle stance. The fourth tip is try to understand the encounters ahead of time. It's very important to know what mechanics can be reflected, blocked, or magic blocked. I'll link a spreadsheet made by Sense for all blockable and reflectable mechanics. Alright, so let's take a look at some gameplay and see how it actually plays. So another tip, starting off, when you're doing a pull, you're going to want to do charge into shield charge. By doing this, you'll get an extra 20 rage instead of just whatever you're getting from shield charge. So I went in with a charge and a shield charge that gave me 60 rage. Got a thunderclap on the first pack that lets me use a shield block, which puts it on cooldown, and I got to put up an ignore pain. So I put my shield charge on cooldown, I put 1 charge of shield block on cooldown, I've got my shield block up, and I've got a little bit of ignore pain. And here you can see I did the Avatar Thunderclap, which means I got 2 back-to-back Thunderclaps, 1 on the first pack, 1 on the second pack. That way I can get sufficient aggro on all these mobs. And here I'm just grouping up the pack. I mean, you're never really gonna pull this big starting out, but when you're doing a long gather like this, I prioritized using Shield Wall first over Demo Shout just because the mobs weren't quite grouped yet. But now that the mobs are grouping up, I used my Ravager combo. Ravager into, it would have been Demo Shout, but since I'm playing Thunderous Roar here, I used Thunderous Roar first. And if I was playing Champion's Spear, you're gonna want to do Demo Shout into Champion's Spear. So once you put all your major damage buttons on cooldown, you just go into your rotation of thunderclapping and shield slamming. You want to just put these on cooldown as much as possible. And while you're doing this, you're going to be gaining a ton of rage. With all this rage, you're just going to want to spam ignore pains and try not to overcap. And try to put your shield blocks on cooldown too. You can see here, I'm just dumping all my rage into ignore pains and shield blocks. I've got 18 seconds of shield block and 2.4 million worth of ignore pain. So just keep Shield Slam and Thunderclap on cooldown. Demo Shout came back up, put them back on cooldown, and just keep dumping your rage. Now, another common question is, people usually ask, Should you be macroing your ignore pain to your buttons? No, I would not recommend it. If you just don't really care about optimal play, it could be better for some of you players to just macro it, I guess, because it's better that you're pressing ignore pain than overcapping your rage. But if you're looking to improve and if you're looking for optimal play, I do not recommend macroing ignore pain. But that is it for the gameplay. It's really just keeping these two buttons on cooldown. Don't overcap your rage. Make sure you have shield block up. And I guess one more really important thing is to make sure you're facing the mobs at all time. I have seen a lot of warrior tanks that might occasionally let an attack sneak behind the shield block, and if you're not blocking an attack, you're taking a crazy amount of damage. Anyways, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel.